You have been awarded the Hildegard-Hamm-Brücher-Prize. What does it mean for you to receive this award?
Yes, so WISC, or the Women in Supramolecular Network, is very honoured to have been awarded the Hildegard-Hamm-Brücher-Prize, and we would like to thank the GDCh as well as the Commission for Equal Opportunities in Chemistry for this recognition. It's really important to have role models, and Hildegard-Hamm-Brücher was an early example for opening up career paths for young chemists, and because when you see yourself reflected in a role model, this makes you feel like you belong and you can see this path for yourself. And it's also important to remove barriers that prevent career advancement, particularly for those in marginalised groups, so that these role models are really important and they need to be visible for future generations. And it's wonderful to see that the contributions to equality, diversity and inclusion are being recognised by the GDCh through this prize. And I hope this increased visibility will lead to more equality, diversity, inclusion projects being developed by others.
Mm-hmm. And can you say a bit about the project, your Women in Supramolecular Chemistry project?
Yes, so we're an area-specific approach that is entirely community-led. We work towards the retention and career progression of women and other marginalized groups in our community, so the supramolecular community. And career progression here doesn't mean that it has to be an academic career, but it can be a career inside and outside academia. So our approach, I would say, is set on 3 pillars. The first one is to generate a sense of kinship and community, to make women researchers feel less alone in a male-dominated field. We achieve this through the network and through different community clusters, like a parenting cluster, disability, chronic illness and neurodivergence cluster. And we're also setting up new clusters for LGBTQ+ people and first-generation scientists. The second pillar would be calling in the community. So we're trying to identify barriers faced by women and other marginalized group researchers through in-depth qualitative research projects. We want to raise awareness to these barriers as well as address them ourselves and pointing out ways for the community to address those barriers. And the third pillar would be to provide a platform for the community to support women inside the community. This is done by mentoring by researchers from the community for women researchers, as well as organizing targeted workshops, for example, on analytical techniques, or organizing panel discussions and conference talks for events. As mentioned before, it's all done in a community-led approach, which means we don't set our objectives, but we let the community tell us what to do. So when WISC was launched, the first thing we did was a qualitative survey. And that way, for example, the mentoring network was set up because this was most heavily asked for. And all other things that have been set up were all community inspired. And yeah, current efforts are targeted towards first-generation scientists, but I think we'll cover that on in one of the later questions as well.
Yeah, and how did you form then? I mean, you're all from the same community.
Okay, so WISC was initiated by literally us starting to chat. So it was myself, Anna McConnell in the first instance, Claudia Calderon, and also Callie Haynes. And it was the 4 of us coming together and realising we had the same issues. We all wanted a community to be a part of. So we started chatting, and then we brought on the fabulous Jen Lee, who basically said that what we were starting to look into was a bit like social science, and we should really have someone who knew what they were doing in social science. So we co-opted Jen Lee, who is also has a history of chemistry as well, and could really empathise with where we were coming from. And from then, I reached out to various other individuals, and then individuals also started reaching back out to me as well. So we now have the fabulous group of women, which I'm very honoured to be sat on the screen with right now, who have created this community that is now rolling into next generation leadership, which is fantastic to be able to see, because this is a network that has affected change and will continue to do so.
Wow. And yeah, can you give some examples of the activities you're doing?
Yeah, I can jump in there. So one of the first initiatives we did was to set up this mentoring network that Larissa mentioned already. So that was at a very early start of WISC in about 2019. And the idea was to not do a classical one-to-one mentoring system, but to have what we call circles, where we pair 1 to 4 early career scientists, a PhD, master student, or postdoc at a similar career stage, with a mentor that's at a more advanced career stage. And that allows to rely on both the mentoring from someone that has more experience, but also this peer support that we found is so crucial for us. So as Jen said, this is how we started WISC, like needing to meet with people that were going through the same as us. So we based the mentoring on the same principle of giving this support network to the students, where they can share on a day-to-day basis with their fellow mentees their little success, their little struggles of every day, and also their little victories and how they move on, and also have more set up meetings with the mentor where they can discuss career stage, how to advance. And now, today, we have about 50 people involved in a mentoring network from all across the world. And some of them have been with us since the very start, so since 2019. So that shows that they really enjoy the mentoring program so far. And to also make this advance, we run surveys in the same idea of asking the community what they need. We run survey within the mentoring network to see what they would like to do next, if they want to do certain workshop, work on certain aspects, and how we can tailor the mentoring network to the people that are already involved.
And who can participate in these mentoring programs?
So at the moment, due to capacity, we only open it to female students. So this could change in the future, but at the moment, it's female students from every career stage, from late bachelor or master, when they already know that they're going to be within supramolecular chemistry, and all the way to, so we have mentees that are postdoc or early independent researcher, and then our mentors are mixed gender, so we have professors and independent researcher also from all around the world.
And do we have other projects going on?
Well, another thing that we did it also in the very beginning, so we planned it in the very beginning of WISC because the community asked for this, was a skill workshop organized by WISC. And this was supposed to be in September 2020, but then for the pandemic, it was cancelled. And then we finally did it in a hybrid form in September 2021. So it was the in-presence part was here in Cagliari, in Sardinia. So it's been, I might have to say that we've been very brave to organize that in the middle of the pandemic, but we were very happy to do that with the help of the VMASC, which is the group from the RSC of macrocycle and supramolecular chemistry interest group. They help us in organizing the hybrid, the virtual part of it. And it's been a very nice event because we had 70 people in presence, mostly women, but we also had some men research, early career research that joined the workshop. And then we had almost 200 attendees, counting also the hybrid, but the virtual part. So this was also something that's really helped building up the community, because the idea there was to give a safe place for people to share their research. And at the beginning of the career, when you are a PhD, you always feel intimidated when you are going to talk into conferences. But that one was a small one. It was almost PhD students, so they felt protected, and it really went well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting ideas.
Yeah.
Do you have other projects ongoing?
Yes, we have a parenting cluster. So again, this was kind of born out of the surveys and what people have said to us at some of our events, and they were wanted to focus on, what's it like being a parent. A lot of the questions we get asked about is like, when is the best time to start a family? So I think that we found that maybe that was a potential barrier of women progressing to, say, professor. So what we've done is a series of different things. So we've got things like we did a panel discussion at one of the virtual mask events, I think it was, and we did it at the actual mask young, the early career, just in December. And we also have been researching like people's stories and people's examples of like when they were on leave, or what people are worried about. So we've got a series of articles with ChemistryViews Chemistry. So that was on planning a family, it was being pregnant in the lab, and one we worked with some fathers who discussed parental leave from the other side, and we've got some more articles being researched at the moment, and they'll be out in the coming year. So yeah, we're just kind of like trying to make the space a little bit less lonely, and making it feel like families are welcome in academia.
Great. Do you have other things ongoing? It's amazing already.
Yeah, I can jump in here and talk a little bit about the disability, chronic illness and neurodivergence cluster. So like the parenting cluster, this is something that came out of a need in the community. So as a disabled researcher and neurodivergent researcher myself, I struggled to find other people in that position just to talk to and have a shared experience. And that has really been what the cluster came out of, just a desire to talk to other people, find out how other people experiences have shaped them and what they've done. So just a peer support in the beginning. But during those discussions, and because we have excellent people on board like Jen Lee, who's a social scientist, when some funding opportunities came up to do a small project in accessibility in the STEM context, we weren't going to apply for it, but then the opportunity was there. We wanted to try and do something. So we applied for some funding again from the Royal Society of Chemistry to run a project on accessibility in the lab environment in particular. So this was working with, again, researchers from all over the world, from undergraduates, from PGR research, postgraduate researchers, to established members of research staff, looking at what their experiences had been, what challenges they had faced, and then also recommending what institutions can do to better support individuals in that situation. So we collated these focus groups and research surveys into a publication in the Journal of Chemical Education, which came out, I think it was last year. It's a bit of a blur, but yeah, it came out last year. And now in that, we called for institutions to improve what they do as well. There are some follow-on projects from that too, both so working with people like Julia Sardu at the University of York, and again with Jen Lee and other researchers at the University of Liverpool, where I'm based, looking at not just the infrastructure, but the tools that people can use within the lab environment. And that, I'm really happy to say, has been taken into consideration when people at Liverpool are looking at new builds, for example. We are starting to use that list of recommendations for when you actually build a lab, you need to think about that at the earliest stages. But it's not just about the lab setting, it's also about the technicians who are key to the experiences of researchers and our researchers themselves in many cases. So it's really great to be working on things like that may have a real tangible impact across not just supramolecular chemistry, but across science in general.
Yeah, that's great. And what impact would you say does your work so far had? And what are your future visions?
So to date, I think we really have opened up discussions in this space. We now have people coming to the network asking for its support. We are regular features at national level conferences across the UK and Europe, and into the States in actual fact, and have a little cluster brewing in South Africa also. In addition, we've started to bring everyone together to have these discussions on the international stage as a regular fixture at the international macrocyclic and supramolecular chemistry conferences as well. And I think that every single member of this network and those associated with it have seen career progression themselves throughout this process, which has been a beautiful thing to observe. And moving forwards, the only person that can answer that is Anna McConnell.
Yeah, so going forwards, we hope to continue with the work that we started, starting new clusters and initiatives in response to what the community needs. And what's really important is that WISC is self-sustaining and community-led, so we encourage as many people to get involved as they will want. And all of our work so far has been supported and made possible through all of the people here on the board, as well as we have a number of advisory board members there international. We've had support from institutions, funders and sponsors, as well as all of the involvement from the community, starting from filling out a survey to taking part in our collaborative autoethnography projects and reflective workshops. And we hope that WISC will also act as a blueprint for people in other areas. You don't just have to be a supramolecular chemist. If you're interested, perhaps this could be a blueprint for starting a network in your own area. So yeah, we'd encourage people to get involved and get in contact with us if they have any interest.
So that means people who are not involved in supramolecular chemists but like your work, they could join you, and then the final goal is maybe that they can set up in their community something, or maybe chemistry-wide or science-wide.
Yes, so the idea would be that we're a very subject-specific network, so all of the information we've gathered is specific to the supramolecular chemistry network, and someone from another chemistry field might find their community has different needs, and using some of the tools that WISC has developed to set up their own network so that they can help find their own community there.
And how is it possible to become a member of WISC?
They can get in touch with us if they want to be part of a mentoring circle. They can participate at events. They're open to everyone. Usually they're at places like conferences, and we have ways of being contacted through our email address and through Twitter if people want to get involved in specific projects.
And you've already touched a bit on that, but where do you find the topics you focus on? So you said something about surveys.
Yeah, perhaps I'll hand over to Jen, since she was responsible for leading all of the survey work.
Yeah, so all of the topics have been very much community-led. And one of the things that I think makes WISC very different from a lot of the other networks out there is that we are not only community-led and area-specific, but we are embedding research into what we do. So I know Emily mentioned some of the publications that we've had in Nature Reviews Chemistry, but we've also published about what the community want, about what we've found from the community in our very first survey in Angewandte Chemie, which came out in 2020, and where we were talking about what the community want and how we can best support them, and setting out our ideas and our framework for supporting the community in this community-led way that doesn't call out bad behaviour but calls in people to support their own. Since then, we also did a project that ran through COVID, which included the collaborative autoethnography that Anna McConnell mentioned, work with research groups in the UK and the US, and also another qualitative survey to the wider supramolecular chemistry community. And in that, we were looking at how people managed research and research groups through COVID-19. And we found that it wasn't gendered. It was much more predicated on whether you had caring responsibilities or not. And although our sample may not have been entirely representative, we did find that anyone with caring responsibilities, whether they were a man, whether they were a woman, they were the ones who felt most impacted by that period of time through COVID-19. We've also published a book, which is available open access, so it's free for anyone to download, which brings together all of that research, but also highlights the experiences of women and other marginalised groups in chemistry, because we don't just focus on women. And I think that's something that's really important to recognise. We have to look at this intersectionally. So we are not only inclusive to trans women, but we also recognise that trans men and non-binary people are also very marginalised within science. We recognise that the barriers due to race or ethnicity and disability will compound. So someone who is black, female, queer, and disabled is going to face an awful lot of barriers to their progression. And I think we're really keen to kind of keep that focus on research and producing high quality research and getting it into a different audience. A lot of science studies work goes to science studies audiences. And one thing that we're really keen to do is to get this work out to the audience of the scientists, of the chemists, who are kind of, they're the people who can make change.
Wow. And this is also how you spread a word throughout the whole chemistry community. And I mean, you're all supramolecular scientists. Do you do this beside all of this work beside your normal research work? Wow. And you said in the beginning that role models is very important. Can you say a bit about that?
So I think when you can see someone who's already led that path, it makes you feel like you can have that path too. And I mean, any career, whether it's in academia or in industry, has a lot of obstacles. I like to think of it like an obstacle course. And so there are obstacles you have to overcome to get to the next level. And with women and marginalized groups, there are a lot more hidden barriers that we may not be aware of, and it's trying to break down those barriers to make that pathway easier for people to make it all the way through to professor. Because there is a leaky pipeline where we're losing women and other marginalized groups the higher up you go in the career progression, and so it's making sure that there's enough people there at the top so that people at the bottom see that's something that I can do in the future.
Oh, can I just add to that, because what Anna said is really important, but a lot of the things the factors that might make people feel marginalised aren't necessarily visible. So although you might be able to see someone's gender or their ethnicity very clearly, you might not know if they're the first generation in their family to go to higher education, which is also a barrier. You might not know if they are neurodivergent or chronically ill or disabled unless they tell you. So I think a lot of what we're doing is also about making sure that people realise there's space for them in the community without ever making anyone feel that they have to disclose or declare anything that they're not comfortable with, but just making sure that they know that there is room for them in the community.
I think that discussing these things means that we're not alone. Like, you feel less lonely and you are more keen to share your experience with the others, because you know that someone else is living exactly your problem, is facing exactly your difficulties. And so I think it's really helpful.
And do you have a tip tips for some for a woman or an underrepresented a person from an underrepresented group who are pursuing a career in chemistry?
Yeah, so we think that one really important piece of advice is to try not to be afraid to seek out help and support if you feel you need it. I think a lot of people feel that this can be a sign of weakness or that you're showing that you can't make it by yourself. And imposter syndrome can be really, really powerful, and it can be incredibly isolating as well. But if you can find a community and support each other, it can be hugely beneficial. And you can look at people you consider great scientists within your community, and you don't always see the support they had to get where they are, but we've all had support to get where we are. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with asking for it. And if there's not an existing community to offer that support, you might have to go and find one. And that really was one of the motivators in us setting up WISC in the first place, was to find a community, and now we support each other and we try to support others as well. We also think on that note that you should be prepared to pay it forward a little bit. So we all try and support others, and we receive support in return. It shouldn't only be the jobs of people from marginalized groups to support each other. It's, as a community, we want to bring everyone together to support everyone. And we want to encourage people to be open to having conversations and learning about experiences of others, but beyond their own experience, so that we can better learn how to support people in our community. And finally, we would encourage people to try and to know their value a little bit. So science really benefits from diversity of thought and experience. We all have something to bring to the table, and whatever accommodations need to be made to enable people to make these really fantastic contributions, everyone will benefit if everyone can bring their best self to the table. So we're all part of the community. We are the community, so we can drive positive change by working together.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. And how has this personally affected you, or what kind of reward or maybe also surprise or challenges have you experienced on working in this group?
I think I'm surprised at the positive feedback, actually. And although obviously there are some negative comments, but generally it's been really well received by the community and by everybody. I am surprised when I get an email, say about one of the articles, saying like, thank you. Like, people don't talk about, being pregnant in the lab or planning a family, and I feel less alone. And for me, that kind of makes everything worthwhile, because yes, we are doing this on top of our normal job. So this is all voluntary for us, really. So that's the big benefit for me. That's the personal benefit. It's just like, wow, like I've helped, like even if it's just one person, it's just meant so much for me.
Yeah, I can chime in there. Exactly what Emily said, like when you're at a conference and presenting something or have a panel discussion and just one person comes up to you and just says, I feel less lonely because of the work you're doing. That's so rewarding. And then last winter at the Macrocyclic and Supramolecular Chemistry Conference in Nottingham, we had a panel discussion on parents in supramolecular chemistry. And the panel discussion was really, really short because it turned into an audience discussion within like minutes. The whole audience got involved. They felt it was a safe space to share their own experience. And that was so amazing to have the community actually support each other rather than just a couple of selected people telling about their own experiences. And this was really, really rewarding and very great to be part of.
Yeah, and I would like to add also in that idea of like bringing your career forward. I think WISC has been beneficial to all of us to help us in our career to feel listened. So at the start when we were looking for that network support to basically tell you that yes, you can do it and it's okay to take different steps in your career and do things differently. And when it's also hearing from the students that we have, for example, in a mentoring network that have been there for a long time, seeing how they step from one career, take one career step after the other, and knowing that the mentoring network and the support, the peer community, the community and the support around them has enabled them to move forward in their career in academia, or also outside of academia, seeing some of the students that did not know how to write a CV landing the dream job in industry, for example, is very, very rewarding. So knowing that like we've been there, maybe we're not the only driver, but we've helped them a little bit getting closer to what they want to do.
The networking and the mentoring, I had that experience as well, and students come forward and say that they've really benefited from that process and they've got where they want to be and they feel a part of the community. I think that's a really important part, that we're taking it out to the community and people can tap into it as and when they want it, and to help someone succeed and get where they want. That's just really rewarding for us.
Yeah, so thank you very much for your for sharing these insights and for your great work and for making chemistry more human and as I think Kelly just said, bring everyone together and to support everybody.